everybody, welcome back to my channel, and today we are talking about rebranding yourself in between jobs. So I think it's really important to discuss what I call the in-between, which is also, when I think about it, kind of sounds like I'm saying the sunken place, but it's not. This is definitely a time when, as a writer, you are working on scripts, you are trying to get representation, you are going out for writing programs, you're basically trying to level up as a writer. And as a writer, this is also a time where if you come significantly from a support staff background, you might be trying to figure out how to rebrand yourself as a writer. It is a little bit taboo, I think, to really start thinking about marketing yourself as a writer as opposed to marketing yourself as an assistant. But I think it's something that when you're going in that transition between stages that you really have to think about. So it's no secret that if you work in a writer's room, you most likely want to be a writer, because otherwise, like, there's no reason for you to really work in a writer's room, and I would recommend you go find another job. Just because you work in a writer's room doesn't necessarily mean that you've had a chance to actually showcase your writing abilities. So I've talked to a few different assistants and people who have been in support roles about what is a good way to rebrand yourself as a writer while you're kind of in that in-between stage between like being an assistant and being staff full-time as a writer. So there are a couple different ways. If you have representation, this is something to be shared with everybody, because having representation almost in other people's minds makes you look like you are more official. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's kind of how like Hollywood works. So it might be just sending an email or getting a catch-up coffee or having a little virtual date or whatever and just saying, hey, you know, I'm rep now. Like, I have an agent, I have a manager. Just letting your network know like you are a repped writer. And to them, that gives yourself a little bit more credibility in the writing world, that you can actually be more than just support staff. So for everyone who doesn't have representation, this is where things get a little tricky. And this is also where like you might have to start making different decisions in the name of your art, okay? So the first thing is very basic. One, take yourself seriously as a writer. You know, like finish your script, finish your pilot. If you want to be a writer, do the things every day that it takes to be a writer. Look at yourself as a writer first, and don't look at yourself as an assistant. That's the first thing, because it always starts with you. The second thing is it might be time for you to start turning down work. And that's a controversial like viewpoint, you know what I mean? Because I think that especially if you're working as like a writer's PA or a script coordinator or whatever, like you're working at a job where you're getting opportunities sent to you regularly, and you can essentially work, but you're always working in the same capacity and you're not necessarily growing. It might be time to be like, you know what, I'm not taking on those roles anymore. And now I know that's a difficult decision, because a lot of times, especially as in support staff roles, you're dealing with, you know, security and money being like the forefront of what you need to focus on. But if you're really serious about being a writer and you're really serious about your art, then it might be time for you to say, no, I'm not coming on as a script coordinator anymore. I'm not gonna be a writer's PA anymore. Like, I need to move up, and I want you guys to look at me in a different light. So I think that sometimes, you know, that can be kind of tricky too, especially because I mean, we're in a pandemic and who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. You know what I mean? We got a vaccine, but I mean, really, do we have a vaccine? That's another conversation. I think it's a difficult decision to make. But I think that it's one that's really important if you are really trying to like level up. Also too, like one thing my therapist said to me was, you know, are you trying to survive or are you trying to thrive? You know what I mean? Like, if you're trying to just survive, do all the things you need to survive. And ain't nothing wrong with just surviving, okay? Sometimes that's, you know, that's what you need to do. But if you're trying to thrive, then sometimes it takes like a shift in outlook or a shift in perspective to really move you into the place where you need to be. And sometimes that just means saying no to things. So take that with a grain of salt, but that's really important if you want to really rebrand yourself, I think, as a writer. So the third thing is, it's time to start marketing yourself as a writer. You know, like if you are not a social media head and you're not really kind of out there, maybe it's time to start putting it out there that is something that you are interested in. Like, as soon as you start putting things into the universe, it starts coming to you. You know what I mean? And the more you kind of stay on people's radar, the better it is too for you to actually attract what you magnify. So definitely just start putting yourself out there, you know. And I know that's difficult a lot of times for writers because we're very much introverts. We're very much like, we're staying behind the scenes and behind the pen and all that stuff. But that's important for you if you really want to, you know, start rebranding yourself as the next thing. So the next thing is learn new skills. And I mean, I know I say this all the time and it's so basic. It's such a basic thing to tell people to learn new skills, but personal development is really important. Like, and I think that we forget that. Like, we forget that it's not just like do, but it's also like learn and be and experience. You know what I mean? So I think it's important that you have more tools in your arsenal so that when it does come time for that opportunity that presents itself, you are there at the forefront. Like, what's up? I got this because I know X, Y, Z, A, B, C. You know what I mean? So nobody can't tell you shit. Learn some new life skills. Go learn how to sew. I don't know. But learn something that makes you more marketable or interesting as a writer. Because when you are actually asked to be a writer and it's like, oh, what do you do for fun? And you're just like, I don't, what is fun? That's not gonna work. You know what I'm saying? So definitely like get yourself out there, make yourself more marketable, learn new skills as a writer. The fifth thing you can do is you can flat out just ask people for opportunities. Like, I mean, I honestly don't see anything wrong with that. I feel like a closed mouth don't get fed. You know what I mean? So if you have a strong network and, you know, you feel like you've done a good job, you know, whatever role you had before, and you feel comfortable and confident asking people if they know of any opportunities, I absolutely think you should. You know, stay on people's minds, stay on people's radar. Now, this could also be a tricky time too, because you can find out how people really feel about you during these times. You know what I mean? Sometimes they're like, oh, but I just see you as a script coordinator. And that kind of leads to my last point. Even though you are in a place where you see yourself a certain way, other people might not see you in that way. And that's okay. You know what I mean? That's how life is sometimes. But at the end of the day, if you keep taking on the same roles that people keep putting you in a box for, you're gonna end up like, what's his name? Jalil White. Like, does anybody else see him outside of Steve Urkel? That's why it's so important for you to really take the reins of your career and to make sure you do a little self-check every time you're in between gigs. Like, am I still happy in this role? Is this something I still want to do? Or can I do something else? Am I where I want to be? Can I move up the ladder? But that being said, it's also going to lead to a period of self-doubt. You know, it might lead to periods where you are outgrowing your comfort level. And, you know, it might be easy to shift into taking that job because you're familiar with it, or working with somebody who you're familiar with instead of starting, you know, working with somebody new or starting a whole new career, whatever. But that's not something that you should be afraid of. You know, you should definitely shift into the uncomfortable. And that's where the growth is. You know, it's cliche, but that's where the growth is. But I think it's also a time where you honor yourself more. You rebrand yourself into the person you want to be. You have more self-respect. And ultimately, you make more money, right? Because the person you want to be is definitely making more money than the person you used to be. So I think it's definitely a time for growth. And, you know, lean into the in-between. Lean in. So anyway, y'all, that is it. And if you are going from home to Hollywood, just remember, you got this.